Welcome to Two Therapists Talking. The hope for this podcast is to talk about important issues related to couples and individuals who are struggling in their lives with many different issues. I'm David Thompson, a marriage and family therapist.
And I'm Sherie Christensen, marriage and family therapist. Please join us as we explore these issues together, and we hope you will learn and be enlightened along the way. Come find us at twotherapisttalking.com. If you like what you're hearing, please get on and rate us and subscribe to the podcast.
Hi, and welcome back to Two Therapists Talking. I'm David.
And I'm Sherie.
And we've been talking about betrayal trauma and long-term effects, and we responded to some concerns from a listener in an email, which we're happy to receive feedback, so please keep sending emails.
Lots on what to talk about, and
it's helpful.
Yeah, we've been really working on trying to pull apart some of these concepts.
Yeah.
And figure out how to understand them and how to explain them in a way that's easy to understand, and why we get sometimes some extreme betrayal trauma responses.
Yeah.
In situations that aren't as extreme on the level of addiction and betrayal on the other side.
Yep.
And trying to figure out where this is coming from, or understand the concepts behind it, and how to move forward in a way that's effective in helping us process it and invite shifts and changes.
Which is the whole purpose here, I think, is to move forward a lot more effectively than we've been operating. And we've had some really good concepts that we've been discussing. And Sherie helped me to understand this better. And I hope we can talk about that today and share it in a way that makes sense, but also is validating, because it's kind of a bigger issue than you think it is. I think it makes sense in larger contexts, and we want to talk a little bit more about that.
Right. So if you've missed the last two episodes, they could be helpful in kind of giving you a little bit of context into what we've started talking about. And talking about where we're not seeing things totally clearly.
Right.
And some of the societal belief systems that we've come from that is shaping the narratives that we have today around things.
Right. If, like we say all the time, if mental health is a commitment to reality at all costs, and the goal is to get to reality as close as we can and to be in it and stay in it and live in it, it helps us to look at culture and society and patterns as to what keeps us stuck, or makes it hard to consider a different point of view or another perspective on things. On really, you could say anything. We're just particularly focused on addiction and betrayal and recovery and therapy and all these things. But so we want to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah. Yes, and what we kind of were looking at is we're jumping back throughout time, right? And looking at the cultural and societal patterns that have shaped how men and women interact. And so going back hundreds, even, 1,000 years, whatever, going back really far, we had a very male-centric society, right? Males were kind of in charge. Women, children didn't have any power, were often seen as property, didn't have any way of having their own rights, right? Like, we're definitely going back several hundred years at least, right? To get to those places where that very much was the way that society was.
Which, by the way, quick side note, the more I do this, the more I see a lot of recovery as very much about power and equality and issues of power imbalance. And so this context, I think, can be really helpful in understanding why you might see what you see, or see the shift or the swing that you see. And so I don't know that we can make a lot of sense of it unless we understand where we're coming from and how power has kind of moved around,
Yeah.
or really recently moved.
Yes.
Been a
Recently
pattern
moved.
for a very long time of not probably a lot of movement,
Mm-hmm.
but more recently there's been a real effort to find a better balance and more equality.
Right. Right. Just in the last like 50 years.
Culturally, certainly,
Yeah.
and women's vote and owning property and the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sherie was pointing something out that it was fairly recently even that you could have a bank account. A wife could have a bank account in her name without needing, a
Yes.
husband to
Her
sign on
husband's.
at a
Yep.
bank.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of this, I think, really informs the issue and gives us better understanding.
Absolutely. And so if it doesn't feel like it makes sense in terms of betrayal, trauma, and addiction yet, stick
Yeah.
with us.
Right.
There's so much to pull apart here. I know we've already done 2 episodes and we literally have several more that we've already mapped out and how to talk about this and really get through it all. So stick with us. We're going to figure this out and to hopefully take you along on this journey of understanding. So we have talked a little bit about the societal differences and whatever. So now we're going to talk about inequality and societal and cultural inequality. So again, going back a couple hundred years, right? You're very steeped and beyond that, right? Very steeped in this place where women don't have any power, where they don't have any rights. And so there's no way for them to maintain or get any type of power, get their needs met in that
In like a legal sense.
Yes, in a legal
Not that,
sense.
and this is separate, by the way, from power in a particular relationship because that depends on lots of personality factors.
Right.
And there were very loving husbands, despite the law saying your wife has no rights that would involve
Right.
or include the wives. What we're talking more about is societal, cultural, like legally, you could not do certain
Right.
things.
And that absolutely then affects relationship. Even if you look back, if you want to compare it to, because there is this concept of, well, okay, but yeah, like, couples loved each other. There were couples that had, loved each other and had good relationships. If you consider just, looking back 50, years ago, 100 years ago or whatever, to how it was okay to like hit kids, right? And that didn't necessarily mean that parents didn't love their kids. It was just seen as an acceptable way to enforce what needed to be enforced that we now understand. And we're going to talk about this actually in a couple episodes from now, where it's mapped out that we get to talk about this in more detail. That we want to come from a place of love and an invitation through love and vulnerability and connection rather than a fear-based space of trying to get our kids to do what we want or get our spouse to do what we want. Right? So we're going to talk about that in a couple of episodes once we understand this whole concept of where we came from.
Just in case, I know if there are guys listening going, what does this really have to do with like betrayal trauma? I think a lot of times they're going to relate to there's been a real shift in power where what the wife is saying, what the wife wants, what the wife thinks feels now like the most important. Feels like he's waiting on her to come around to something or to allow something or to engage or to be more close. And so all of this, I think this will make a lot of sense the more you listen, why it might be that, if you're a guy saying, okay, I have pornography, masturbation issues, but it feels like the relationship is really struggling and maybe it doesn't feel like equal to what's happened. Maybe it feels like an overreaction, or maybe it feels
like there's nothing you can do to improve it, even if you are having some sobriety and doing a lot of things moving forward.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this will help to put that into perspective, I hope. So keep listening.
Yeah. So having that inequality for a very long period of time, right? That's not something that we want, right? It's not healthy.
Right. It's not balanced.
And it's not balanced. So we don't want that to continue. And we've had this great space in, the last 150 years where we're starting to see some shifts there. Yes, like women, have the vote, and then we start seeing this pattern of shifting where it's more acceptable. And I need to step back one more time back into the past to before I jump forward into the change that's happening. So in this place where you don't have any power legally, which can translate into your home, because
Right.
it does mean that your spouse can do whatever they want to you and there aren't any repercussions because you are the property. If they're in that really bad space, but sometimes even if they're not all the way in that space of I don't care and I'm just going to beat you, right? How do you then keep yourself safe? And how do you then have a voice? And how do you then maintain any kind of power or control in your own life? And the way that that happens when you are in that disadvantaged space is going around kind of the back end. So a good way to see that is if you've ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, right? Because they're talking about very traditional spaces there, right? And the mom's talking about, well, yes, the man is the head, right? They get to be the one with the last say. They get to be the one that, all these very traditional sort of space. But the woman is the neck and she can turn the head, right? And so you see this concept of they have to go around the back door, and you see that in that movie, they have to kind of go around the back door to make it seem like he's the one that came up with the idea. He's the one that thought through this, right? And that is the way that that's the only way to keep yourself safe and maintain some sort of sense of power and control in your situation when you don't have it otherwise, when you're not given it culturally, right? That's where you come up with you see the concepts of like feminine wiles and stuff like that, right?
Right.
It's this very around the back way to try to gain and maintain a sense of control, and a sense of safety and security in a space where you don't have it, where you're
Right.
not being given that by society. So that's important as we move forward.
It's really important to think of it in that context and to consider it. If it needs some time to sit with it, it'd be helpful. Because we will adjust. And so if we don't have power in this area, then where can I have power?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
a pretty natural reaction.
Absolutely. And I think that's as we move forward and we start as a society trying to equalize that, trying to shift that where we have more of an equality. And we see that change and we see those challenges to that change where now it's okay for women to have their own bank account. It's okay for women to work outside the home in similar types of spaces that are going to provide similar types of income. And no, we're not 100% there yet, but we've made a lot of big changes where we're shifting that balance, right? And working on that. And what that provides is some of that safety. I'm allowed now to leave an abusive relationship, right? I have the ability to do that if I'm getting beat, if, these things are happening, right? And that's good. We want that. And I will be okay in that situation because I can support myself. I'm allowed to support myself. I won't be destitute. So now I don't have to stay in spaces because of fear of like starving to death, fear of like all of these other things, right? And so this is good. This is important, right? Nobody wants to be, I think ultimately if we sat down and said, hey, like, do you want to be in a relationship with a partner who only is there or who is there because they're terrified of like starving otherwise, right? Like they're not really choosing in because they want to be with you. They're choosing in because of having to like protect themselves on a very like baseline.
They have limited options.
Yeah.
They depend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's good. We want that. We want that change. We want that movement. And as we're coming into a better balance now, where we have that that shift, there the aspect of that, it is now not as okay for men to treat women in the way that it was historically acceptable for them to treat them, right?
Right.
So that's where that shifting is happening. And now they can support themselves if they need to leave abusive and unhealthy spaces, right? So now what we're looking at is a power shift, and we have to be careful with that power shift that we're seeing, because we also have to shift the unhealthy aspect of the attempts to get power in a place where you're powerless, right?
Right.
So those spaces where you have to manipulate and go around the back end and withhold things that the other person wants in order to get your basic needs met, that has to also change, right? Because that's not healthy either. It's necessary in that situation. But as we're shifting out of that situation, we want to also be shifting that unhealthy dynamic.
Which is a normal pattern in history, is if there
Right.
is an underpowered or underprivileged group, to then give them more power than whatever group might have been the more powerful group. I mean, we see this in like race relations. Let's say, if black people come from being slaves and we're trying to shift power back, we don't just want them to be equal. Often what we'll do is something like affirmative action, where good intention, good motives, but we're going to make it easier for
Right.
blacks to get into certain jobs or certain schools than it would be for, let's say white people who traditionally had more power.
Right.
So the
In order to
balance is
try to-
always a challenge.
Yeah, in order to try to shift some of the undercurrents that can still exist, even if on the surface we're trying to have this equal
Right.
space.
Which that is the goal. That is the purpose. So what we're talking about really is things are moving in good directions. We just have to be a little more aware and recognize the cycle and the pattern if we want to be effective sooner. Because I think in
Right.
time we often reach equilibrium and find a better balance. But if we're aware of it and thinking about it, and our focus is united, we can get there sooner, and it can be a process that is less, hopefully, hurt, heartache, and sorrow along the way.
Exactly. So this new power shift then creates a space where we need to also be addressing those patterns on the side of women and historically needing to back end their influence and their power and their support and what they need. And so that's kind of what we want to talk about, is this space, and then the goals that we have, why we're reacting in the ways that we're reacting, how to move forward as a couple and individually. So that you've just kind of got the map for the next couple of episodes that we're going to do. So we want to definitely look at this pattern on this side of things, and shifting also those feminine patterns of having to go the back end. And sometimes that can look like bringing up things that are concerns, but like not really bringing them up in an effective way or a clear way, like being kind of quiet about it, or saying it a little bit and then kind of backing off the issue. If you don't get a super positive response to it, it can look like not talking about it and being kind of frustrated or resentful in yourself. It can look like doing some of those things for a long time and then exploding about it, right? And I think part of this that we want to talk about also goes along with male and female, like masculinity and femininity. And the masculine space of like kind of being a fix it, move forward, get it done, just kind of like what's in front of me, what do I need to do and do that thing. And kind of the feminine energy around being intuitive, right? And that's where we get kind of where we'll make fun of the other side of like, oh, they're too emotionally, or they're like logical and they don't have feelings, right? These are aspects of masculinity and femininity, and we don't want to be extreme in either one of those, but
Right.
it is going to be more of a pattern for most men and most women to be in those spaces. And so understanding that and then working together on those things instead of against each other on those things is really helpful. There is going to be some intuitiveness that comes with being more emotionally connected. And there's going to be some really huge benefits to having logical, like, let's walk through this and fix the situation kinds of things. And so what we want to do is in a balanced, healthy relationship is for women to be able to effectively bring up some of the intuitive things that they're noticing or seeing or feeling, and having them be acknowledged and heard and seen by that logical side, and like, okay, let's work together. And I think sometimes what happens is, as is natural, if you're not seeing the thing and you're feeling like things are fine, right? Your natural response is like, okay, well, it's not that big of a deal, right? And so sometimes we can negate that intuition that's being shared, right? About something feels off, or like, I would like something a little bit more like this, right? Then that relationship pattern can develop over time where one person isn't being heard and seen and the other person's like, I just really don't think it's a big deal, until the other person gets really upset. It says, I'm done. I don't like this. And then they're like, I don't even know what was going on. Right. And part of that may be because they're being dismissed, and part of it may be because the communication isn't going very well. And again, a lot of this comes from these cultural, societal patterns of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right.
So we want to get to this different space as that power shifting of equality and being able to work together to notice those changes, just like David was talking about, way faster than we might otherwise if we just wait for the societal swing to go back and forth and finally find this equilibrium. So stick with us. We're going to do several more episodes on this. And next time we're going to talk about what our goals are as we're trying to move a little bit more quickly than society is moving in our own personal relationships.
So join us then.
Thank you for listening to Two Therapists Talking. We look forward to sharing more conversations with you. Connect with us at twotherapisttalking.com or email podcast@twotherapisttalking.com. If you like what you're hearing, please get on and rate us and subscribe to the podcast.